If you walked through the dusty, sun-baked paths of Iyagba village and asked any man, woman or child, who is the most beautiful woman here, they would all smile and point in the same direction. Adaze, daughter of Chief Nwachukwu, the wealthiest fabric trader in 7 markets. Adaze moved like moonlight on still water. She spoke in soft, careful words that landed on your ears like a mother's lullaby. Even the birds seemed to pause when she walked by. But if you asked, who is the most feared woman in Iyagba, the smiles would vanish. Mothers would cover their children's ears. Men would instinctively check their pockets. Grandmothers would spit on the ground and whisper a prayer. And every single person, without 1 second of hesitation, would say the same name. Chisom. Now, Chisom was not ugly, no. In fact, if her character had matched her face, men would have been fighting duels for her hand. But her character? Her character was a pot of palm soup left in the sun for 3 weeks. It would curdle your appetite just to look at it. She was the daughter of Paobiora, a humble raffia palm wine tapper who wore his humility like a second skin. But Chisom carried herself like she had conquered Rome and nobody told her yet. She had no friends, only casualties. Her mother, Mama Obiora, spent her mornings apologizing to neighbors before Chisom even woke up. She means well, please, she means well. Nobody believed her. Then came the morning that the whole village would never forget. It started at the main market square, under the great Iroko tree, when Mama Nkechi, a grandmother who had been selling tomatoes since independence, adjusted her wrapper and smiled at a customer. That was when Chisom's voice cut through the morning air like a machete. Mama Nkechi, you are a thief, a certified shameless thief. The market froze. Baby stopped crying. Goat looked up. Chisom, please, Mama Nkechi trembled. Fuel prices have gone up. I only adjusted. Fuel? Chisom clapped her hands 3 times, the way you clap when something is so absurd it deserves its own applause. Does tomato drink diesel? You are selling rotten, wrinkled tomatoes for the price of a generator and you are mentioning fuel? If you don't return my 50 naira, I will scatter this stall and let the market judge between us today. A young man, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that made young women lose count of their change, stepped forward gently. Madam, please, let's come. Chisom didn't even look at him. You, sit down. You planted cassava in a half plot of land and you think you can interrupt adults. Your shoes are begging for retirement and you are here playing peacemaker. Go and fix your life first. The crowd gasped. The young man stepped back, wounded in a way that no blade could have caused. Chisom collected her money, hissed so long and loud it sounded like a tire deflating, and stomped away, kicking a stray hen out of her path for absolutely no reason. That was Chisom. She argued with the rain for falling on her. She quarreled with the sun for being too bright. She had no enemies, only people who hadn't yet met her. 3 days later, the town crier's gong rang from one end of Iyagba to the other. Gong, gong, gong. Hear ye, His Royal Majesty Eziechukwu Emeka, the Lion of Iyagba, is ready to take a new queen. All maidens of virtue and grace are invited to the royal selection. The whole village erupted. Women began oiling their daughters' skin with shea butter that night. Mothers wove coral beads into their daughters' hair. Fathers practiced what they'd say to the king's emissaries. Everyone looked at Adaze. Radiant, soft-spoken, perfect. Everyone looked at Ngosi, the school teacher, brilliant and composed. Everyone looked at Sister Uchenna, the Reverend Father's niece, dignified and graceful. Nobody, and I mean nobody, looked at Chisom. In fact, her own father, Paobiora, went to the village herbalist the night before and whispered, "Is there something mild you can give her? Not to harm her, just to make her sleep through this election day, just this once." King Chukwuemeka was not what you imagined when you thought of kings. He was young, barely 35, broad and strong, yes, rich beyond counting, yes, but there was something behind his eyes that told a different story. A shadow, a grief carried quietly. His first queen had died 2 years before, a fever that came in the night and left before morning could argue with it. Since then, the king had grown thin in spirit, even as his body remained strong. His council of chiefs, led by the smooth-tongued High Chief Ezeobi and the calculating Chief Emenike, gathered before the selection. "Kabiesi," they said, adjusting their red caps, "what you need is peace. A woman who will not disturb your sleep. Someone gentle. Adaze is perfect. She will never raise her voice. She will never question you. She is manageable." The king looked at his chiefs. He looked at his guards, standing so stiff and silent they looked like carvings. He looked at his servants, heads bowed so low their chins touched their chests. "Manageable," the king repeated softly. "Everyone wants me to have peace." But his eyes said something else entirely. The day of the selection arrived like a festival. The palace courtyard was filled with color, wrappers of indigo, yellow, red, and gold. Maidens from 8 villages stood in rows, their necks heavy with coral and gold, their faces painted with care. They danced. Oh, how they danced. They cooked. They recited proverbs. They answered the elders' questions about tradition and wifely wisdom. Adaze was breathtaking. She knelt with the elegance of a woman who had been practicing grace since she learned to walk. She spoke in perfect, measured words that smiled at exactly the right moments. The chiefs nodded. The crowd whispered, "It is Adaze. It must be Adaze." And then a commotion at the palace gate. "I said move. I am a citizen of this kingdom and I have every right to be here. Or did the king write your name on the gate? Move." The guards stumbled aside. Chisom walked in. She hadn't dressed in her finest. She wore a simple Ankara blouse and wrapper, her hair tied back roughly. She hadn't come with beads or rehearsed speeches. She walked through that courtyard like she owned the land it was built on. The crowd went silent. Then the whispers began. "Is that not Chisom? Who told her to come here? God help this king. God help Chisom when the chiefs throw her out." The king, sitting on his throne on the raised platform, leaned forward. For the first time in months, perhaps years, his eyes were fully open. Chief Ezeobi stood immediately. "Guards, remove this. Sit down." The king's voice was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap. Everyone froze. The king stood up from his throne, something kings did not do during selection, and walked to the edge of the platform, staring at Chisom with an expression nobody in that courtyard could read. Chisom stared back. She did not bow. She did not look away. "What is your name?" the king asked. "Chisom, daughter of Obiora, the palm wine tapper." "Why are you here?" Chisom's chin lifted just a little. "Because I heard a king was choosing a wife, and I thought, why should only perfect people apply? The perfect ones will smile and agree with everything you say, and you will be alone on that throne forever. I came because I actually have something to say." The crowd erupted. The chiefs erupted. Paobiora, watching from the back of the crowd, quietly fainted. But the king smiled. Not a polite smile, not a diplomatic smile, a real one, the kind that reached the eyes. "Chiefs," the king said, turning slowly, "leave us." "Kabiesi," I said, "leave." What happened in that private meeting, only the palace walls know for certain. But what the village saw was this. 3 days later, the town crier's gong bet the gong again. Gong, gong, gong. Hear ye, hear ye. His Royal Majesty Eze Chukwuemeka, the Lion of Iyagba, is ready to take a new queen. And when the name was announced, Iyagba village stood in silence for a full 10 seconds. Then, the oldest woman in the village, Mama Adara, who had seen 92 harmattans, began to laugh, slow at first, then louder, until tears ran down her wrinkled face. "The king is not a fool," she said, wiping her eyes. "He has been surrounded by people who tell him only what he wants to hear. He chose the one person in this village who never learned how to lie." Chisom became queen. And here is the twist that nobody in Iyagba ever forgot. In the years that followed, the sharp tongue that had made the market tremble, that same tongue became the voice that argued with the king's council when they tried to cheat the farmers. That same stubbornness that had humiliated a market vendor became the iron will that refused to let the palace exploit the poor. Chisom never became soft, but she became wise, and there is a difference. The village learned something that year that they passed down to their children.